This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Gido-Yort. It's Friday, February 5th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of coronavirus, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Dominique Ongwen, a child soldier turned commander in the Lord's Resistance Army, was convicted Thursday in The Hague of multiple war crimes and crimes against humanity, including murder, rape, torture, and the abduction of children. But some of his victims say he was a victim himself. David Doyle has two reports. First, on the convicted war criminal and on the ruthless actions of the LRA.
A former Ugandan rebel commander, Dominic Ongwen, has been convicted of widespread and brutal war crimes, including murder, torture, rape and sexual enslavement. Ongwen was abducted as a teenager by the Lord's Resistance Army, but rose up the ranks to command one of the group's four main operational units with up to 800 fighters. That background highlights the complexities of the International Criminal Court case. Because he was conscripted as a child, Ongwen was both an alleged perpetrator and a victim. His lawyers had called for his acquittal, arguing that his mental health and capacity to make independent decisions had been affected by his brutal life.
He was not a puppet on a string.
But on Thursday, the ICC found Ongwen guilty on 61 out of 70 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity, carried out between 2002 and 2005. Presiding Judge Bertram Schmidt said there was overwhelming evidence that Ongwen had been in full possession of his mental capabilities.
There exists no ground excluding Dominic Ongwen's criminal responsibility. His guilt has been established beyond any reasonable doubt.
The Lord's Resistance Army, led by the fugitive warlord Joseph Kony, terrorized Uganda for 2 decades. The court found that Ongwen had ordered the killing and abduction of many civilians, personally taken sex slaves, and also forced children to fight in hostilities. If they were unable to walk, abductees were beaten to death. Babies were taken from their mothers and thrown away, so the women could carry looted goods to LRA's camps. In a legal first, Ongwen was also convicted for the crime of forced pregnancy, for atrocities committed against 7 women. He will be sentenced at a later date.
Then he came and said, I have to kill. That's his of mine.
Louis Lacour was just 7 years old when Uganda's Lord's Resistance Army killed his family and kidnapped him to use as a child soldier. On Thursday, the commander responsible, Dominic Ongwen, was convicted at the International Criminal Court on 61 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity. But Lacour believes Ongwen, himself conscripted as a child soldier, should be forgiven.
He was being abducted and he was being tortured. The family members were being killed, like the parents. So he has all the trauma on his mind. That's why he was doing it.
In 2003, LRA rebels murdered Lacour's parents and raped and killed one of his sisters. Ongwen, by then a top commander, was in charge of the operation. Lacour and his other 2 sisters were marched into the bush. When one sister became tired, she was shot. Lacour was forced to kill his other sister. She was only 3.
When I refused, they beat me, they tortured me, and they said they were going to kill me if I did not do it. So I have no option but to do it.
After 8 months, he escaped, but his nightmare is one that echoes across tens of thousands of other children kidnapped and forced to become fighters and sex slaves.
Raping women, that was their job, and killing people.
Sylvia Nakut was also abducted by the group, led by fugitive warlord Joseph Kony. She says she was raped by more than 100 men and gave birth to a son she doesn't know if she will ever see. But she too thinks Ongwen should not have been convicted.
It's really sad that some of the people who are paying consequences, like the crimes he did, are the people like Ongwen was not supposed to be convicted, to me, although I'm a victim.
Ongwen's verdict shines an uncomfortable spotlight on the question of culpability in a society still deeply traumatized by the militia, which rampaged through northern Uganda from 1987 to 2006, but has in recent years been largely wiped out. For the International Criminal Court, Ongwen's guilt has been established beyond reasonable doubt, and the court ruled he had committed atrocities of his own free will. It also noted that Kony has evaded justice for more than 15 years, and called on countries to help secure his arrest.
David Doyle of Reuters filed those reports. Residents in a Nigerian neighborhood are trying to recover Friday following the deaths of at least 6 people after fire broke out and engulfed a market in Abuja, according to local media reports. The blaze erupted in the Gwanripa district in the early hours of Thursday morning. Media reports say that it was ignited by a spark in one of the shops. An eyewitness told the Daily Sun newspaper that the market was engulfed for 2 hours before the fire service arrived at the scene. The pro-democracy group Freedom House has released a report detailing how countries such as China, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, and Turkey systematically employ violence and intimidation against exiles and diasporas to silence dissent beyond the borders. WEWE's diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sen reports.
The world recoiled in horror when prominent journalist and U.S. resident Jamal Khashoggi was murdered in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October 2018. Khashoggi became the face of a practice known as transnational repression, when a dissident flees a country yet still faces persecution in exile. Freedom House released a report Thursday documenting the practice.
The report is really our effort to try to describe the global scale and scope of this phenomenon, and to put some numbers and to put some figures and to put some faces behind something that happens to many people all around the world.
The report says there have been at least 608 cases of transnational repression since 2014, including assassinations, abductions, assaults, detentions, and unlawful deportations. It includes case studies of 6 leading states that target exiles and diaspora communities: China, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, and Turkey. Even high-profile dissidents are targets of authoritarian leaders, in a practice that Freedom House says has been normalized.
Not only the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, but, for instance, the kidnapping of Paul Rusesabagina, a very famous Rwandan activist who was living abroad, who was kidnapped in August, the kidnapping of multiple Iranian dissidents in the last year, the assassination repeatedly of Chechens, especially in Europe, by Russian authorities.
Another prominent case is Lujain al-Hudlo, a Saudi activist who helped win the right for women to drive. She was kidnapped from the United Arab Emirates in 2018 and imprisoned in Saudi Arabia, where she says she is being tortured. To help stop such cases, the report urges democratic nations, including the United States, to review their asylum, deportation, and rendition policies to prevent future repression. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
As part of its power grab this week, Myanmar's military cut access to the internet. Efforts to control information are tactics being seen in other parts of the world, as Isha Sarai reports.
As the military seized power in Myanmar this week, it intermittently cut off access to the internet. That affected the ability of citizens to communicate, get information about the coup, and of course, the ability of journalists to cover the crisis.
On Monday, my colleagues were out of reach for 3 or 4 hours when the military totally shut down not only internet, mobile, services. So they didn't come online. And on the morning, we were having very early newsroom meetings and how we are going to report. And then 7 a.m., they all gone.
Internet shutdowns in Myanmar are not new.
In the context of Myanmar, internet shutdowns have been happening over the past years. I mean, for instance, there are a number of townships in the Rakhine and Chin states that have not had internet connection or have been throttled, reduced internet connection for a long time.
Internet cuts have been tracked in Uganda, Ethiopia's Tigray region, Belarus, and India, among other countries, around times of contested elections, protests, or civil unrest. In Kashmir, access to fast internet has been blocked since India revoked the contested region's special status in 2019. India says the blocks are needed to fight extremism and false news.
Whenever, even right now, if there is a gun battle in South Kashmir, they'll, the government will suspend internet of that area.
Internet blackouts, slowing the internet, and blocking websites make access to information more difficult.
When you find yourself in a crisis and you don't have access to information, you're not able to reach your family and friends, you are left in a state of confusion.
So much so that the UN has declared internet blackouts unlawful.
They're a very blunt instrument that is being used to cut off people's right to access information.
The state of the internet in Myanmar has changed regularly over the past week, but journalists and activists say they remain determined to communicate. Isha Sarai, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. lawmakers say the threat of domestic extremism remains high almost 1 month after pro-Trump protesters violently stormed the U.S. Capitol, resulting in the deaths of 5 people. As VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson reports, those threats are expected to continue well past the Senate impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump.
The consequences of the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol still playing out this week. As the U.S. Capitol police officer killed in the assault is honored, and the U.S. Senate prepares for next week's impeachment trial, weighing whether former President Donald Trump incited an insurrection over his baseless election claims.
You'll never take back our country with weakness.
But extremism stems from more than anger over the 2020 presidential election, lawmakers warned Thursday.
The irrefutable fact is that the threat of right-wing and more specifically, white nationalist terrorism has been growing for years. The previous administration failed to address this threat appropriately.
More than 160 people nationwide have been charged for their role in the riot, with hundreds more arrests expected. The Department of Homeland Security issuing a rare threat warning on domestic extremism, a growth in white nationalism, and a belief in conspiracy theories that can be manipulated by foreign adversaries, analysts warned.
Russia in particular are employing decades-old tools of covert action to fan the flames of cultural conflict here in the U.S. And our foreign enemies do this by creating or perpetuating false narratives that strike at the heart of democracy itself, that our elections are rigged, that our system is inherently corrupt and should be overthrown, and that radical voices who call for violence or insurrection have legitimate views.
The assault on the Capitol, planned in part on platforms such as Facebook and Parler, also renewing debate over the need to set tougher standards for social media.
Extremist ideas have been mainstreamed and normalized through political speech, conspiracy theories, and communications that use humor and memes to mask the danger of those ideas present. Consequently, there is a high likelihood of violence in the coming months on a range of softer targets. I do believe that we will be fighting domestic terrorism that has its roots and inspiration points from January 6th for the next 10 to 20 years.
But left-wing extremists should also be considered part of the domestic threat, some House Republicans argue.
Whether it's left-wing extremism, such as what we saw in Portland, Seattle, Kenosha, and even here in D.C., or right-wing extremism, as what occurred at the Capitol on January 6th, it is a serious issue, and it must be remedied.
National Guard troops are expected to be in the nation's capital through the impeachment trial and beyond to guard against continuing domestic threats. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
Facebook's independent oversight board is deciding whether the social media firm's ban of former President Donald Trump from Facebook and Instagram was the right call or should be reversed. Tina Trin reports.
As former President Donald Trump faces an impeachment trial in the U.S. Senate, he faces another court of sorts, the Facebook Oversight Board. It will decide whether the internet company's decision to indefinitely block the former president from Facebook and Instagram was the right call.
In a way, it's an experiment. And I think many people believe that this is the way forward because the alternative is, I think, for the government to be making the rules or Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg to be making those decisions.
Endi Bayuni, an Indonesian journalist, is one of 20 members of the Oversight Board.
We take into account, of course, Facebook's standards, Facebook values, and international human rights laws.
Members recently issued their first rulings, and in 4 out of 5 cases overturned Facebook's decisions to remove content. Facebook complied with the board's decisions and reinstated the posts.
Please welcome the 45th.
After Trump's appearance at a January 6 rally, Facebook referred its decision to ban Trump to the board for review, and also asked for a review of how it should handle speeches by world leaders. Some are asking if the board itself makes sense.
This is sort of like Walmart, or Aston Martin or Jaguar or something, deciding to have a court, right? Which is really very strange.
The social media giant is acting as if it were a sovereign nation with its own court structure, says law professor Lillian Edwards.
The more people discuss what the board does, the less they discuss whether there should be a board at all.
Others blame an absence of government regulation that tech companies can easily fill.
It doesn't solve the structural problems of the business models, of the algorithmic amplification of hatred that I think have to be addressed.
Board member Bayuni says the goal is not to replace government regulations.
We don't see ourselves as a substitute to the laws in the different countries. That's for them to decide. But we are here to help in content moderation.
The board is accepting public comment on Facebook's Trump ban and expects to make a decision as soon as possible. Tina Trin, VOA News, New York.
Stigma, logistics, and money compel thousands of Kenyan teenagers to drop out of school each year after becoming pregnant. But a new school is offering them education free from judgment. Soraya Ali has the details.
Josephine Wanjiru's dream of becoming a nurse could have ended 2 years ago when she became pregnant. She's 19, and for teenagers in Kenya, pregnancy usually means being forced out of education. But a new school has given her renewed hope. Nestled into a hill below Mount Kenya, in the serene Haven Secondary, the sound of babies cooing punctuates lessons, and infants can be seen crawling on the stairs.
It's my aunt, the one who paid the school fees, called me. It was on December, and she asked me, Josephine, what do you think about your life? And if you can get another chance, can you go back to school? I said, yes, I can go back to school.
Serene Haven opened in January, and among its students are 17 teenage mothers and pregnant girls. In a normal year, stigma, logistics and money compel around 13,000 pregnant girls to drop out, Kenyan government data shows. That number is likely to spike this year, with lockdown restrictions fueling an increase in adolescent pregnancies, according to aid agencies. Elizabeth Muriuki, a former social worker, founded the school.
So out of the 17, you see 14 girls got pregnant during COVID period.
Muriuki was a teenage mother herself. She says her story of being able to build a career encourages pupils like Josephine that they can succeed. And with the boarding school offering counselling services and daycare, Josephine can focus on her ambitions.
I'm sure that my dream is going to come true.
Soraya Ali of Reuters filed that report. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover during the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, this year's films are shaping up to be a big and possibly historic one for women. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. The 34th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the Heads of State and Government of the African Union begins on Saturday. The theme of the summit is Arts, Culture and Heritage, Levers for Building the Africa We Want. U.S. President Joe Biden and his administration are committed to working with the African Union to advance their shared vision of a better future. In a recorded message, President Biden spoke to the AU Summit participants.
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to send the best wishes of the people of the United States in advance of the 34th African Union Summit. This past year has shown us how interconnected our world is and how our fates are bound up together. That's why my administration is committed to rebuilding our partnership around the world and re-engaging with international institutions like the African Union. We must all work together to advance our shared vision of a better future, a future of growing trade and investment that advances prosperity for all our nations, a future that advances lives of peace and security for all our citizens, a future committed to investing in our democratic institutions and promoting the human rights of all people, women and girls, LGBTQ individuals, people with disabilities, and people of every ethnic background, religion, and heritage. To reach this future, we also must confront the serious challenges we face. That includes investing more in global health, defeating COVID-19, and working to prevent, detect, and respond to future health crises, and partnering with the African CDC and other institutions to advance health security. Raising our climate ambitions and ensuring developing nations can mitigate and adapt to climate impacts that are already causing pain. And engaging in sustained diplomacy in connection with the African Union to address conflicts that are costing lives all across the African continent. None of this is going to be easy, but the United States stands ready now to be your partner in solidarity, support, and mutual respect. We believe in the nations of Africa, in the continent-wide spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation. And through the challenges ahead, although they're great, there is no doubt that our nations, our people, the African Union, were up to this task. I hope I can be with you next time in person. I want to thank you, though. Thank you. May God bless you all.
In the realm of film, the year 2021 seems to be the year of woman. Dozens of acclaimed films and TV series by female directors pondering a woman's complex world are being released every week. Many are already Oscar contenders. WEWE's Penelope Pulu looks at new examples.
Myself in college 10 years ago.
10 years later, and she's still living very much in the center of the trauma of what happened to her, but she's trying to find a way through it, and her way through it is to sort of one by one correct injustices.
Carey Mulligan says the film exudes a subtle horror.
It is not the extremes and the absolute worst violence that is experienced by women, or the worst violations. It's the really subtle stuff that we've just become so used to in our society.
The film is receiving buzz for Oscar nominations.
Sophie,
Losing Alice by Israeli-American director Sigal Avin is a dark Israeli TV series on the power dynamic between two women. Alice, played by Israeli actress Ayelet Zurer, is a 40-something filmmaker juggling life as an artist, a mother and a wife. Sophie, a young, intense scriptwriter and actress, is brimming with creativity and unbridled ambition. The two women meet on a train and start a partnership. Alice will direct Sophie's script, an erotic psychological thriller, with Alice's famous husband as the lead actor. Actress Ayelet Zurer says this sexual triangle runs more like an existential story about the price female artists are willing to pay for creativity and success, about the power play between older and younger women, and about women's unapologetic goal to have it all.
A woman has to do something awful to save her kids, or something questionable to save her kids or her marriage or something. It has to have a reason, otherwise we can't forgive her. But in this case, what Sigal has done is that she does it for herself, just because she wants to.
The series is streaming in over 100 countries.
Wow.
Oscar-winning actress and Grammy-winning singer Jennifer Hudson brings Aretha Franklin on the large screen in Lizzle Tommy's biopic called Respect. The film follows the rise of the Queen of Soul from her childhood as a choir singer to her international superstardom. Penelope Pulu, WEWE News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.
Ili kuwa mwanafamilia bora wa Global TV, usisahau kusubscribe, like, kushare na kucomment. Baada ya kusubscribe, bonyeza alama ya kengele ili kupata taarifa kwa kila video inayopanda Global TV Online.